Hey there, what you are about to watch or listen to is a conversation about ChatGPT. This is an AI service that will write papers, cover letters, anything you can think of that is available free on the internet right now. This conversation is with learning designers, instructors, chairs, and other professionals at Front Range Community College and the CCCS system. It does start a little abruptly. You're going to hear Chris jump right in, and he's already talking about the results that he found. But do keep listening. There's a lot of really great information and conversation around the use of this technology in higher education.
And it put it in APA format, but it cited it in a Journal of Research Education as opposed to a blog. And it made up an issue number and made it look all official. But so really only if the grader knew the topic area and knew the journal really well or took the time to look up the journals, you would be able to find out that that actual article didn't exist. It was originally a blog post that the software conflated into and manufactured into an actual looking like a legitimate source. So it's a bit creative.
Okay, so I just wanted to check again. Has anybody else gone there and tried to write an essay or anything like that? Okay, Jesse, how did it show up for you?
The essays that I asked it to write?
Yeah.
It was very good with obviously things like spelling, grammar, topic sentences. It would put together, coherent evidence, very well structured. It was probably, I would say the essays that I was getting were probably better than about 80% of the essays that I got in my classes for 10 years. But there were, because it's a large language model, like it is taking, like with the citations, it is taking a lot of things. Like ChatGPT is not searching the current internet, right? It is using language that humans have created and it has been trained on. And so it will sort of regurgitate things that are not accurate if you go and check them. But it does a very good job of looking very legitimate. It sounds very good.
Okay, did anyone else try it?
I've tried it. So this is my grad class today. It's a pedagogy class. And we were wondering, we're trying to work on a project and thinking about the difference between Eastern and Western teaching theories. Or like, we don't know if there's a big enough difference to do this in the class. We just asked it and it gave us a whole answer that looked like, I don't know, we had asked an expert and they had written it out for us. So it was pretty interesting.
And I just saw Jerry, so it could make a convincing candidate for a political office. Yeah. and I will tell you, for the e-learning consortium, like this was on December 12th when there wasn't a problem getting into ChatGPT. We put in our call for proposals. We went, let's see what happens if we have it write that. And it was just like, I think that the consensus was there wasn't a humanity in it. There was no humanity in our call for proposals where and I know Farah like earlier shared with me, like Farah and Chris have kind of been my resources. Like they send me every ChatGPT thing they find, and we go out and we've been looking for things. And like Farah like shared when she said the game using using interactive fiction, which interactive fiction is usually a word-based choose your own adventure game. Like, what was it, a 14 or a 12-year-old kid put in, look up Harry Potter and ask Harry Potter questions that could do a branching storyline with, and the answers to the questions are A, B, C, and D. And it did it. And we had some fun with it. Yeah.
New version, the one coming up before the summer or maybe at the end of the summer, it's even better. Would even make videos. You just have to tell it, this is what I want. So you have the video, you have the content, you have every single thing.
So for everybody that this is new for, ChatGPT, and like we've been saying, oh, you had to write some HTML. Yeah, and I have big questions about that. Like you can have the philosophy that yes, there's an infinite way to code things, but then again, there's not. There's some real. Sometimes coding is very straightforward, and besides ChatGPT, you can usually find coding that people lift, just from doing a Google search. Yeah. So the thing about it is, this is not going to go away. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit about this now. And I'm going to go ahead and share. And this is why it's not going to go away. So this is some of the background about why it's not going to go away. And some of that background is okay, major mainstream publications started sharing it. Okay, I know that Chris Fra and I have had discussions about who started the publicity or who wanted to. It hit. Okay, this opened up on November 3rd. This opened up on like November 30th, and then it suddenly hit all the major publications. And we live in a society that, like sometimes things are done for business purposes. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that out there. The New York Times hit it. It started hitting all the education journals, and there's a regular group of people who blog on educational technology who ran with it. So it started showing up everywhere. So December 7th, it hit the Atlantic. So it hit a certain group of people with the Atlantic. Then it hit New York Times. And then it started showing up everywhere. And then, like, this is the example. This was for Reuters. Okay? Suddenly the company then started to show up in the business and the technology news and saying that OpenAI that owns, and this is the company that owns Chat GPT, there started to be news articles about they project $1 billion in revenues by 2024. And so then the news articles started about, oh, okay, how are they going to make money? How could they possibly come up with a business model that could make money out of this? Because right now, and how it's been since November 30th, is it was opened up. You could use it if it wasn't, if too many people weren't using it, you could go ahead and use it. And the thing of it is, they didn't call it an open beta, nor did they make any promises for how long something like this was going to be free. Okay, so that you know the background of this OpenAI, in 2019, Microsoft invested $1 billion in a partnership with this company. And then there's also this kind of cool, or interesting, depending on how you think about it, this cap profit model that they have, that they thought it was, yeah, so it's a small independent company, yes. So you have to think about this. The people who are putting this out have a partnership with Microsoft. This is not going to be free for your students forever. It's a pretty good writer, and it's confident at lying. Yeah, Ava, I would totally agree with that. Okay, so they think this is going to be so profitable that investors are being capped at only getting 100 times their return on investment. That is different. Yes. Will this be ad supported? Who knows? Like, how is this going to be monetized? We don't know yet. How long is this going to be available and free? We don't know yet. If it's not available and free, then it becomes an equity issue. It can easily become an equity issue. And here's where I'm going to rely on Farah. Farah, your son, who happens to be a freshman in college, is there a certain software he uses when he writes essays?
Grammarly.
Yeah.
So my question, why not hearing big fuss about Grammarly? And you have the basic kind of free version, and then you have the up version for $148 a year. But you don't hear anyone in higher ed complaining about Grammarly. But yet, with this AI, there is a whole thing. And you have seen the article this morning. Colleges or university in New York even changing their policy to add something, not someone, and their plagiarism and academic integrity. So.
Yeah, and so the thing of it is, and this is changing so fast. This was from 6 a.m. our time. I teach technology, so I go to TechCrunch all the time to find stuff. Oh yeah, and people keep sharing these things. But as of this morning, there is now a professional version of ChatGPT that you can sign up, or that you can go ahead and sign yourself up for. Okay, so from November 30th until today's date, January 11th, this has now showed up. Okay, so this is so these AI tools may vary. Some might be free, but others are definitely going to be monetized, and the situation is going to keep changing. Okay, so what about Turnitin and other plagiarism? I pulled this morning. Like I said, we've been following it continually. Okay, you can go in and on business, you will, and Chris, you can share the link to this so people can look at it. Okay, if you go in, this is the title of it. Posted 4:40 a.m. Eastern time. You read the article, and it says, however, executives at the anti-cheating software maker Turnitin says they've cracked the code, and then they plan out to roll out the service this year. Okay, we did a session earlier this week on Turnitin.com, and at that point in time, if you go on their site, there's a blog from December 15th that says about how educators will need to start rethinking, essays and assessments and things like that. While this has gotten reported out that they've cracked the code, they haven't come out with an announcement saying that Turnitin.com now can handle it. They have not said that. From the news that I was watching, Bloomberg News back, in mid-December, the Turnitin executives were saying something similar to this, saying, oh no, we will have something that will go ahead and crack that code. Now, the thing that has been showing up on social media, and Chris, feel free to share the links here too. And Eva, I believe you can ask. There's a student from Princeton who has over Twitter, it was not this weekend but the weekend before, said that he came up with something that can detect it. The news article reports that people have put things through there. While I do not necessarily support business, I do not support business models that take our students' intellectual property and make money off of it. What I will say, yes, Danielle, absolutely, and we'll get discussing that in just a little bit. What I will say is that what I will say about this is, yes, there is supposed to be a tool out there. I would not take a student essay and put it through a system that I did not vet, that I didn't know exactly who owned it. I hate that Turnitin.com takes my students' intellectual property. That is a personal belief of mine. And while I am looking to see, I'm following who might have something that detects it, I would not put my students' work in through a generator that I did not know. So while you can go ahead and you can find it, is not something that I would suggest that you would take and put student work in. Most reports have been people who have gotten ChatGPT to write something, and they've tried what ChatGPT did for them and to see if it worked. Now, what does this mean for our pedagogy? So yeah. And thank you, Jesse and Eva, for putting that in there. Danielle, yes, it's an opportunity for us. So some of the things that have been going around with discussions about what doesn't it do well. It doesn't scaffold from one assignment to another. So if you have your students having to do one assignment and they have to take that assignment and put it into the next assignment and then continue working on it, and say even using peer feedback, it doesn't do that well. It doesn't refer to external objects in a meaningful way. Now, I will tell you, like, my example for my discussions, and again, I have a content specific domain. My students in discussions not only have to discuss it, they then have to share either an image or they have to share a video that furthers the conversation, and they have to bring that and they have to discuss that particular image or that particular video. So for me, it's less that I have my students, have to refer to an annotated bibliography, but they have to refer and bring in something that's external. So then think about what this last one says here. If you need a book report or summarize an article, you can do that well. If you want it to compare and contrast the themes of two different books, it struggles to do that coherently and tends to stack them on top of each other. So we have opportunities. Oh, and yeah, thank you for continuing to share this. And I mean, some of these opportunities, I know that when me, Chris, and Faraz started looking at this, the first thing Chris said, oh, this could write for somebody, how some discussion questions are written. Oh, this could write discussion questions.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It depends on how, what's interesting about this is that for one-offs, which is what a lot of folks use for discussions, it does okay. For standardized testing or standardized essays, it does okay. It's not going to be like your top performing student writing it, but it does. The question is that what you're seeing is that it does, as Jesse talked about earlier, is that it does okay. You'll find issues, you'll find problems with it as you're grading the written part. If you're in a comprehension, a writing based course or a writing focused course where your rubrics and stuff are focused very much on writing mechanics, you will find flaws. But the question is it good enough to give you a C? Because a lot of our students, that's what a lot of our students look for, is they just want to pass the class. So that's one of the challenges you run into with this type of technology is, you're playing that, it's an arms race of sorts, where the academics were looking at how do we keep up with the technology so that way we are still able to provide a honest assessment of the student's ability to master and how they're demonstrating their mastery. So that way we can be confident in the grades that we assign. But then students also look at this as, well, this is just a tool. Like, well, there's a lot of students who, if they're using ChatGPT, and you'll see it in the articles, that they see it very similar as like using Grammarly. Well, I use Grammarly to correct the way I write and to help me with grammar. Why shouldn't I use this? And so part of that's educating students on, it falls along the lines of, watch that gray area of plagiarism, and for some folks. And that's really what we have to look at is how do we create, number one, pedagogy that minimizes this type of technology, but still, allow students to effectively demonstrate their mastery.
Okay, and in the slides, and as Chris has been sharing that Google document, we have these links. So I just threw this up here because I thought from Cable that some very interesting things are happening. And Ava, can they get similar benefits for writing essays by AI? I think only if we, I'm going to say we're going to have to be on the guides on the side for that. So that it's not just this is a tool and you just drop it. I think we're going to have to be the guides on the side for that. I mean, a lot of people use turnitin.com and say, oh, well, I'm using this so that you can see whether or not you've missed references and you can go back and you can redo it. I think the question is it's gonna depend on us. Oh, let me go further. Okay, so this is something that I pulled from TechCrunch today. Because TechCrunch, like I said, does technology. It's in my content area. My students have to use it for one of their projects. They have to go to TechCrunch and look at some of the latest technologies. Now, I just pulled this straight from there. So this general partner at Baukunst said she'd be shocked if associates weren't using ChatGPT, given that the AI is a natural evolution of snippets. So what she's talking about in businesses that quickly need to put things up on websites, quickly need to answer customer service problems, things like that they might use ChatGPT. Now, by people who are at Westminster campus today, we had connectivity problems today. And like 3 different emails had to go out today about that connectivity problems. IT could have used Grammarly to come up with it. And if they could have gotten to ChatGPT, they could have just sent a query that asked like, okay, so write up something because we're having connectivity problems that would also include about being patient. Rather than them having to sit and think about, okay, exactly what should I put there? And before I send it out, they could have used something like that. And Eva says, could we use AI for grading essays? Chris, the second thing that you said after you said students could use ChatGPT to answer discussions, what was the second thing you said about ChatGPT?
I said it was fair game. No. Probably depends on how you frame the query. So I haven't tested that.
Okay, well, I'm going to interrupt you there because you're directly answering Ava's question, and I'm going to go the second thing that Chris said, because he's answering Ava's question rather than mine, and we'll get to Ava's question. It was that Chris went, oh, students could use this for discussion questions depending on how the discussion questions are written, and he goes, oh, and faculty use this to respond to students' discussions depending on how it was written. Now, Chris, you can go ahead and talk about Ava's.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that it depends on the how you frame the query, and I forget what ChatGPT's character limit is when you're writing a query. So
we'll go with yes, it's possible, and we
you
should
could probably
continue
do, I would think you could
discussing
probably
it.
do feedback to a discussion post. I don't know if it's anything more than a page, if it would be able to give a good feedback or okay feedback.
And the thing about it is this next thing that I'm pulling up, you know, in what context? In a business class, because in a business class, knowing how to use chatbots, that might be a new skill we start teaching our students. In a business communication class, it might end up being that way in some of the CIS classes, even when there's things like, okay, so if you were on that, and I pulled up business 1015, and this is the community college system. At different colleges, they will have different, they will have different things for their learning outcomes. But these are the 10 learning outcomes. I think for ChatGPT or any other AI out there that might be coming up, it might be real. If you are taking it directly there, it might be easy. If you're just relying on what those specific learning outcome is, and if you're not nuancing it. Because I know it, do I have anybody else here who teaches business? And if you teach business, just type Y in chat so I know you teach business. And I'm seeing no one.
I type Y.
It's okay. But what I'm saying is, if you're so stuck on the student learning outcomes that you don't nuance the knowledge, yes, these are things that a student could get from AI. Now, introduction to business does not, across the US, does not have a high pass rate, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's less than 50% actually.
Yeah. So the thing about it is, myself, Chris, and we dragged Kate Haggerty into it, and we were starting to have discussions because a lot of people turn their intro to business courses into a writing course. So everything that the student has to submit most of what the student submits, other than maybe a presentation here or there, is an essay. And the thing about it is, for a business course and you're asking them for APA essays, it might not match. I know we've gone to writing across the curriculum, but we may have to think about, besides writing, what can students do? And I know Farah mentioned ChatGPT would soon have a video component where videos could be created, but quite honestly, Kate Haggerty and I, we were looking at this, and we were both going, oh, instead of having to write essays, students could make videos, like a business news network for each and every one of these things, and it would still meet all these requirements. So we just pulled this up as an example, as and I'm not talking necessarily about you, but maybe in meetings you have and stuff like that, is the default to essays, APA or whatever citation system you use, is the default to that to have students show their knowledge? Should we be looking for something else? And I mean, that really opens us up to things like inclusiveness and equity, and our students who may be neurodiverse, that if we think about something other than the essay, we can be really opening ourselves up there.
What's funny is, like, when I was looking at those outcomes, I'm like, those are really good queries for ChatGPT.
Yeah, they are.
So you can create content that.
I mean it. And so look at your SLOs. I mean, have you cut them down to where they only, a student can query it? If a student can query it, then, like Ava's been suggesting, maybe we start rethinking things a lot. And I'll go a little faster here, but when it comes to our learning theories, okay, our design models, maybe it's looking more towards social constructivism. And social constructivism, that's exactly what we've been doing here in this session. We've been sharing what we know. We've been asking questions. So we've been making comments. I mean, we've had some serious contributors whose names were not listed, on like the facilitators for this. The other thing is, if you've taken online essentials with me, we covered the learning theory connectivism. It's time to pull that one out again. And Chris, you can share links, but connectivism looks at where do our students get knowledge and information. And while we won't spend forever looking at this, but that things like learning is a significant process that you never stop at. And this is a big one that lots of times people questioned, but learning may reside in non-human appliances. That's ChatGPT. And as a suggestion that was made, do we need to teach our students how to use it? Do we need to teach our students how to learn from it? Do our students know how to learn how to use AI and chatbots? Because depending on where they get hired, and I'm going to ask everybody real quickly, type in a Y if you know that your institution uses chatbots. Type in N if you could do IDK, I don't know, and type in N if you know that they don't use chatbots. So everybody go ahead and do that. Does the organization you work for use chatbots? Go ahead. Type in yes if you know they do, yes if it's a yes, you know it's a yes. Type no if you know it's a no. Type in a IDK if you don't know. Yes. Answers. Front Range does have some chatbot capacities. And really, with our institutions, where it shows, a couple places that it really shows up, when students are looking for, are just first coming to Front Range and the basic questions. The other thing, if I have anybody here who's taking classes or teaches at University of Colorado Denver, Metro, or CCD, the Aurora Library, when you go to that library, that's a chatbot that shows up. That chatbot shows up for the query, and then once you make the query, if it's not automatically like in the knowledge base, that's when you get connected with a librarian. And I have to say props to the Aurora campus, because they are part of a system that if you try and do it 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, our time, you get a librarian from Australia. They're in a consortium that after it goes to the chatbot, then it will go to a librarian from one of the consortium schools. I know because, yes, I've looked things up 2, 3 a.m. in the morning where I've had to get the librarian and I've gotten someone from Australia. Well, how do I know that? Because I started chatting with them. Okay, found out where they were from. Okay, so
Of course, everyone here has been robocalled at least once.
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah, so organizations are using these. So your students, even if you use the neoliberal be a good employee model, your students are likely to have been seeing something about that. Connectivism, again, this is the learning theories that go beyond social constructivism, behaviorism, cognitivism, and look at how how exactly are your students learning? And big one for this, right answer now if it might be wrong tomorrow. Again, ChatGPT, the information we have to follow on this, it's everything I've told you today will probably be wrong in a week. Okay, so do we embrace this technology? Ava and others have been discussing this. Maybe we do. Maybe we start thinking about how to use it. Maybe it's part of our discussion, maybe it's part of our what we put in our discussion forums or the discussions we have in classes. And the big thing about it is we may have to go into we may have to think about what's deeper learning rather than surface learning. If ChatGPT can do things quickly for us, that at what point will our students start using these things? Like, as far as Grammarly, Wendy's mentioned it. I know Faraz's son uses it. How many of your students are using it just to help? Lots of businesses have it already for their employees.
As you're saying this,
please, Gary.
I just want to say something here too, because there's, so I guess on the surface level, there's this tension in intentions, right? So we're taking, at least as I'm listening to this, I'm taking different perspectives. Like, okay, if am I your instructor tasked with the responsibility of teaching you something, right? This something right here in this particular way. I'm the student who's self-tasked to get through this course so I can get on with, the rest of my degree. And there's a lot of different hats in this. If I were a student and if I were inclined to game the system, right? Yeah. So I approach my learning as a transaction. It's a transactional thing. I got to get through this class so I can get my degree. I get my degree so I can get my job. I get my job so I can get my retirement. That's my approach to life. Yeah. I would be then, with that frame, inclined to try to get this thing to work, right? I'll chat GPS this thing, learn how to tweak it, work with it, mold it until it's convincing, until it convinces you. I've achieved my objective and I've learned something very, very important, right? And it's advanced me in my objectives. Right. So in what you're saying, yeah, there is learning to be had here. I think, though, what it comes down to for me is in a situation where there's a conflict of intentions, then there has to be a conversation, I think. Right. There has to be some connection to where we have a mutual understanding about what it is that we're doing together here. Right. And what we're hoping to get. If I'm an instructor, I'm incorporating this, I want to impart this to you. This is why I believe it's important, right? And is there some kind of a standing middle ground? And for me, I'm trying to articulate what I believe this has to look like in terms of what you're saying, right? At the theoretical. So we're talking about constructivism. Right. Well, if it's going to be constructivist, there has to be some kind of a dialogue. There has to be a back and forth in this relationship of learning. It's not just, okay, this is the definition of constructivism, learn it, repeat it back to me. That's not constructivist learning, right? That's learning about constructivism. So I think that's a piece of the challenge, is that if we're not going to set ourselves in an attitude of opposition to it, okay, we have to find a counterbot to to have this tech escalation. Then there has to be then there has to be a way to acknowledge this thing, incorporate within this, right? So if I was teaching an essay, it's like, okay, yeah, look, let's do this. You write something, have the chat GPS write something, and try to fake me out, right? Do it to where I can't tell the difference between the two. That's the assignment. Right? I don't know.
There's a lot of discussion going on about teaching and from people who are in the education profession about, yeah, pull it out. Like Kat has the examples, the course that she's taking, it was about pedagogy. Pull it out. Let's see what it can do. And I think that's what we need to do. Like it's been reported like NYC schools have now blocked it so you can't get it on any computer. But students will figure out how to do this. And the thing of it is, I think it is having the discussion and then looking at your assignments. I mean, for me, I'm gonna relook at my discussions. Like I said, even though I have them put an image in and they have to put a video into it and they have to describe that, I'm gonna take another look at my discussions.
Yeah, well, I think what that does too, I think it forces us to really re-examine what it is, what it is that we're doing, what it is that we're intending to do, right? So if I'm saying, okay, well, my intention here, my purpose in this is to get you to write an essay, right? To understand it, to be able to articulate this, and I need to be clear that it's your articulation. But if in the course of that, someone who's used to researching things, again, kind of like, okay, I'm going to use the tools at hand, like pulling an encyclopedia used to be, right? The Google. I will go out and I will look at other essays, good essays. I'll pull the encyclopedia and go, this is the good definition, right? This is the standard. And that's how I learn from it. Okay, that's how you do an essay. Okay, that sort of lines up with this, the outline or the model that the instructor is giving me. I'm seeing some good examples of this, and I'm going to cull out of that, right, the form for my words. And some of those words might be similar words to the words that I'm like culling from, right? So if you understand that is the process that the person is actually, your learner is actually going through to create this thing, this essay, does that match your intention? Was that what you think you were doing? Right? And if not, what did you mean by I need this to be original thought?
And I think, and in the popular press, it's things like the college essay is dead, doom and gloom. I think the reverse. I think, oh my God, we got a chance now that we get to look at our teaching differently. If anything, and I mean, yes, sorry, for me, I'm happy about it. Now, I'm like thrilled.
I think it's going to cause problems, right? Already, it's an interruption. I mean, and this is real practical material reality for a lot of people. So, like an instructor, you have to do something about this, right? Because, like, all right, how does this change the validity of what it is that I'm doing, right? I mean, so that I think that's real, and I think that's a fair question, and I think it has to be something that has to be reconciled at an institutional level, right? So there's that facet of this problem, but I think too at a really fundamental level that it's it raises questions about what it is that we mean by learning, and if I'm just thinking, I'm trying to wear two hats at once, having gone through the educational process, right? If what you mean by a good essay is whatever the hell's crossed your desk all these years that you deem good stuff, I've got to question what it is that you're actually doing, right? So if you already have in your mind the ideal essay by which all essays will be rubriced and compared, I'm not sure that learning is what I can't be confident that the learning that you assume is going on that leads to that perfect essay is happening if the perfect essay is the only thing you're using as a marker for that. So how is it that you're discerning that learning has happened? And again, it's not because, well, the student is isolated within a box and they have no access to any information and just comes out, right? That's not the environment that we're in. So how do you know? Anyways, I don't want to like get into the weeds, too deep into the weeds with this, but those are the kinds of questions that raises for me.
Yeah,
right?
actually, the weeds is where we should spend like the rest of like the semester and the year, because think about it. There was a business out there that checked for plagiarism. That business is Turnitin.com and other anti-plagiarism software, but the big dog is, the big dog has been Turnitin.com. Turnitin.com says that this year that they'll put something out, but it's not out there, it's not out there now. So this business, like this, our educational system had a reliance on a business that no longer can do to, and I have other, Ava's saying like you can have notes. Yes, it could be drafts. As suggested, students could have to respond to what other students have done. And I know that we're ending soon, but this was from Yeshiva University. I'm just pulling this up really quickly. That they have now put in that they say from someone uses someone or some things language. It's different. And to end us up there, pretty much, I'll stop this slideshow. And anyone else have comments or anything else? Bye, Jorg. Before we go, even though it's supposed to end at 1:50, we can stick around until the top of the hour.
I just wanted to add to what I put in the chat quickly, which is, yeah, this was the only time, because I also teach online classes in another school, that I ever had a question about a student plagiarizing, because she went from writing like a CD essay one week to writing like an A essay the next week. And I was like, okay, how did that happen? And I even put, gave my, the admin, I asked them, but I also at the same time, because she said she used the smart thinking tutor, and I was like, okay, well, if she did, she should have the notes. And so
okay, yeah,
I asked her to send me the note, with the grade, because I graded it. I didn't, accuse her of it without evidence, of course. And that's what the admin asked me to do. And she did send me the notes, and she had made the change. So I think in her case, especially with the discussion posts, because her discussion posts are just terrible. And she basically says that she's like she did week 8 reflections, and she's like, I'm a really, point to point person, and I don't have time for this. And I don't, so I think she just doesn't bother, right? If she doesn't have to, she doesn't bother proofing her work. She doesn't bother, she's just lazy and she's busy. But when she has to, when she uses the actual tutor feedback, her work really improves. So, I guess, there's always that issue, right? I mean, we need evidence. We need evidence, notes or something that they came up with these ideas themselves, that they didn't just type a question into a chat box, is how I feel. Or
hey, I had a real quick question about Turnitin. Do you know if Turnitin has changed where I've had students who've done who've submitted assignments before, and if they do it in a different class, and then let's say they pull it up and it pulls up in my class, right? Because Turnitin will tell you that the assignment was out there, and they're like, oh my goodness. How do we combat that? So if a student is using the same assignment just to a point where
I would say it's not really the topic of the discussion, but I can answer it real quick. It shows up again. It shows up again, and then you have to look at it from what institution has it, and then you have to have those discussions. And quite honestly, George Hines is our contact person at FRCC for that. But I will say, depending on the content area, and I'm going to use business as an example. Sometimes if you're reporting on the facts of a company in one course, say a marketing course, if they're very similar, if you're reporting to them in, say, a management course that's allowing you to have the same topic. A lot of people, so that it happens. So other questions and other things about it, about ChatGPT. Jesse, you got anything? Or thoughts? Thoughts are good too.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about this. I've been doing some investigation into it for a while, and I mean, I think there's a really like big question of whether or not, you know, these skills are even something we want to, like you've been mentioning, like if a computer can do it better than a human, how interested are we?
And Jesse, we lost you. How do I know? Because I can't hear you, and I saw Eric's face go, I can't hear him. Eric's a good bellwether. Wait, I can't.
Just as you were getting to the good stuff too.
Yeah, I know, Jesse. So you can come back on. Yeah, I mean, like in machining, we have machines that do that cutting of the different things in advanced manufacturing. We don't necessarily have to do each one, by hand anymore.
Jesse, are you back?
Yeah. Sorry.
There you are. Good to go.
The perhaps even much bigger picture to me is also like, this is ChatGPT is not the last thing we're going to see. It's not even the only large language model out there. There's a bunch of them. I've been exploring a bunch of different AI tools. There are video editing tools. There are voice synthesizing tools. And they're just expanding, right? And so there's a big question to me about education in general. How do we, if you think about the number of technological advances that were like sort of really paradigm changing within the 1900s, and then you look at how many there have occurred within the last 20 years, it's a big difference, I would say. And I think one thing that we're going to have to like really keep on our toes about in the educational world is the increasing rapidity with these things change. We are going to have to become, I think, increasingly adaptable to the possibility that a technology can suddenly emerge and really radically change how we need to operate as educators, how we need to, what skills we're even focused on. Like our capacity for adaptation, I think, is going to have to really, we're going to have to really kick it up a notch, because it's not slowing down.
If you have any questions or would like to share your thoughts or even get invited to the next conversation, please feel free to reach out to a member of the Learning Design team, Kay Novak, Eric Shermer, Wenda Threlf, or you can email idc@frontrange.edu. Thanks. Have a great day.